Hello, Rotoworld waivers Q&A with Patrick Daugherty, Kyle Dvorchak. Sorry we were running a few minutes late. I have very important business to attend to. So we are very sorry to be late, but looking forward to your questions. A crazy week. It's weird, Kyle. There were a lot of injuries. I feel like a lot of the storylines, though, were more like quarterbacks rising, quarterbacks falling, catastrophic fantasy development with Kirk Cousins going out. Supported, he fed, talk about like fantasy mouths to feed. Has like anyone been supporting more elite fantasy options in recent memory than Kirk Cousins? You know, losing an all-pro in Justin Jefferson, then kind of almost conjuring a new one whole cloth out of Jordan Addison. Not that it's a surprise that Jordan Addison was good, but just doing such great things. That's a huge, huge fantasy loss. Like, what's the latest on Matthew Stafford, by the way? Because I feel like that would be almost as bad as Kirk Cousins going out. I know IR was a possibility. It seemed extreme for Matthew Stafford to put him on IR after he played through a thumb injury yesterday. That would almost be tankathon, I felt, for the Rams. But a lot of like direct effect injury stuff this week. And then like a lot of really like interesting down ballot stuff. So a lot of stuff going on the waiver wire. Is there an ad of the week this week or is there not? Definitely not like any silver bullet ads. And Amari DiMercado still out there in a lot of leagues. Pop Douglas is going to get a lot of run this week with Kendrick Bourne tearing his ACL and a lot of targets opening up for the Patriots. But if there's a waiver wire ad of the week for Week 9, who would you say it is?
Out of the week for Week 9 is Trey McBride. I hope you need a tight end, but unless you have one of the 3 best tight ends in the NFL, you should at least be exploring tight end because he saw 14 targets, 10 catches, just shy of 100 yards, and scored a late touchdown. It looks like he's very clearly taking over the Zach Ertz role, but then doing more with that role because Zach Ertz is like mid, early 30s, just not going to produce as much under that role. The young, athletic Trey McBride, if you need tight end, is the very clear ad of the week.
And it also seems like a situation where even if Zach Ertz misses the minimum amount of time, which is 3 more games, so a long ways to go for Zach Ertz, it seems like the torch has been passed. And it's tight end, so it doesn't get as much attention as like a plug-and-play running back would get. As someone like Jordan Addison would get, even though Jordan Addison was always way over 50% rostered. It's pretty rare, what I was trying to say, for a tight end to be the ad of the week. But, man, oh, man, he's a true must-add. Trey McBride should be 99% rostered after this week.
He's going to rank as a tight end 1 for me very easily.
We witnessed the birth of a new tight end 1, essentially, which is rare in any week. Very rare midstream of the season, Week 8. Like, because why would that happen? You know, like, why would there like be like a tight end 1 laying
under normal circumstances? There's just not really a reason for it to happen, but it's abnormal. If you'd like not only a Stafford update, Stafford is day-to-day per Sean McVay with a UCL sprain. It's like the ligament in your thumb, right thumb, which I assume is a throwing hand. Almost every quarterback in the NFL is a righty. So right thumb UCL sprain day-to-day. Still, day-to-day is typically going to play this coming week. And Brett Ripien is the backup, so you would think they're really going to want him to play. But I don't know. He's a guy who's just consistently dealt with injuries, the back, the elbow, now a thumb. Can they afford to sit him for a week? Probably not. But can he afford to play through the injury? Also probably not. I've got a second one for you. I was not expecting this. This doesn't even... Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon said either Kyler Murray or Clayton Tune will start in the Cardinals Week 9 matchup against the Browns. I like functionally benching Josh Dobbs, even in the sense of even if Kyler doesn't play, Clayton Tune is getting the start. Tune didn't really appear ready for action. I believe it was in the preseason. He's kind of got picked apart. But at the same time, like, what do you gain by playing another game of Josh Dobbs, who has been fine, but really all he has provided is not turning the ball over and taking sacks. And even then, more recently, over the second half of the first half of the season, hasn't done quite as much of that. There's just no upside with him, but the floor isn't great either. They're not winning games under him, obviously. So I get why they're throwing Clayton Tune out there. It is weird to like also include Kyler Murray, where I thought they'd like already ruled him out for this week, essentially. And now they're doubling, right? Okay, I'm not crazy. They had already, at least reports were that they had already ruled him out this week. And now they're doubling back on that. I mean, it's a tough spot for them because their season from week 1 was already over. You're playing without Kyler Murray and Josh Dobbs, your starting quarterback. So do you keep sitting Kyler Murray just to let him fully get healthy? But then do you need to evaluate him under this new regime because you're going to have one of the top picks and get a quarterback? Do you want to try and evaluate Tune, or do you want to, quote, try to win games under Josh Dobbs? A lot of moving parts for them, but I guess Josh Dobbs is benched.
They need to evaluate the tank. They need to evaluate the quarterbacks. They need to evaluate the tank. So just a lot of evaluation mode for the Cardinals. Some evaluation mode for us. We have some technical difficulties. I want you to take the first question. I'm going to log out and come back in. It's real boring stuff. We don't need to explain to the audience. But take a question.
Oh, I see.
Monologue a bit, and I will be right back.
Yeah. I'm in control of the questions right now, so I'll run these, and you can hop back in. I got it. I read your Slack. Patrick Miller. No, I'm so sorry. Patrick Miller says, lost Cousins in Superflex. That really sucks. If Mullins, I assume that's if Mullins the answer. Nobody on the wire this league. So, or it is Mullins the answer. So Pat and I talked about this on the recap show, and for the life of me, I was like, I know Nick Mullins has been on this roster. He's been on this roster almost the whole year, I think. I don't think it was like a midseason signing. I looked into it. He was, and I even blurbed this. I'm fairly certain I wrote the Nick Mullins goes on IR blurb. I still forgot it. Nick Mullins was placed on IR a few weeks ago with a back injury. He's expected to be able to return on the immediate, you miss 4 weeks and then you come back. But that would only have him back in week 10. So they have, I think, Sean Mannion, on the practice squad, something like that. But to me, it seems like a very legitimate Jaren Hall is going to start for a single week. I'd be surprised. I guess he could play well and then start again in 2 weeks, but is going to start for a single week. And then it's up to, is Nick Mullins ready to return, which the reports are that he will be, but that's still an ambiguous situation. Or do they bring, I think it's Sean Mannion off the practice squad? He'll be called up either way because they need the backup quarterback. Do they trade for someone or look for a free agent? Obviously, like Ryan Tannehill's an option, but he's dealing with the ankle injury. Carson Wentz is out there. Pat, someone asked about the Vikings quarterback situation. Did you look into this at all? Because we were right that Nick Mullins is on the roster. I'm almost sure I'm the one who blurbed him going on injured reserve with a back injury, and I still forgot it. But he's eligible to return in 1 week, if I remember all this nonsense correctly. So he's on IR with a back injury, but he's like a capable QB3. I don't want to say he's capable backup, but he's a capable, you're down to your third quarterback option, but he's not available this week. Outside of that, I think it's like Sean Mannion is the third quarterback on the practice squad, but he'll be called up.
See, Nick Mullins schooled in the Shanny quarterback school. And again, sorry for our disjointed start to this chat. It is my fault. But Nick Mullins schooled by Shanny, been schooled in the McVay system. Someone who is probably going to be the classic. He can't create fantasy value for himself. If he's your super flex, you'll probably be regretting it like every second of the week, but maybe just competent enough to get looks to someone like Jordan Addison, to get looks to TJ Hawkinson. The thing is, he's not going to be able to do both, is he? Like, he's probably going to be able to support one guy, keep one guy relevant that is compared to where they were. TJ Hawkinson's not going to be a top 3 tight end anymore, I don't think, unless he's like the winner of the Nick Mullins sweepstakes. Because it's not going to be this BYU guy for more than 1 week. It's Jaren Hall, right? I can't even remember.
Jaren Hall, yeah. He was like a 4th-year starter, played to his 5th year, 5th-round pick. Just like, I don't know, a 5th-year starter, 5th-round pick. Imagine what you think that is. It's about what he is what I'd say. Yeah, it's not great. So here, Office Depot says, so bye-bye KJ Osborne. I hate to put too fine a point on it, but it's bye-bye. KJ Osborne. And like you said, it's probably going to be bye-bye like Jordan Addison or TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson's going to go out and get 7 targets next week for 3 catches and 40 yards. But until we know the winner of the sweepstakes, you have to play both of them. I'm not playing KJ Osborne.
So everything about it is like a moving part. And 2, like you have to throw out the week 9 moving parts though, because the start this week isn't going to be predictive at all moving forward. So it's kind of a nightmare scenario where you've been getting elite production from these guys. It's crunch time this season. We're getting into like trying to qualify for the playoffs now. Then you have just 1 week that you just like you forget about it. It's like it doesn't even exist. And then you get presumably Nick Mullins week 10, and then you have to wait 2 or 3 weeks to really like find the pattern there. Because I just do think.
But Justin Jefferson should be back by that point too.
That's another moving part where Justin Jefferson has already told like every national reporter like, hey, I might slow play my recovery if I'm not really feeling it. And I'm not really sure if an unpaid Justin Jefferson is going to be
Sans
rushing
Kirk
back.
Cousins on a lost season.
Yeah, to catch passes
So,
from Nick Mullins.
To the question sort of point was that, I think there's like, what do I do? I assume, would you be just like start an actual running back wide receiver at flex over Jaren Hall? Like, is it that deep?
No, because I mean, Kevin O'Connell is a good enough, only cares about offense. Like, he's a great for fantasy. Like, he doesn't seem to really care about the 53 as a whole. He leaves the defense to be totally autonomous. He seems like he can scheme offense, and he does the kind of things that creates fantasy points. So I would still bet on like wild hair upside of Jaren Hall, not to oversell his dual threat. Like, if you pull up his sports reference, it's not like 800 or 900 yards rushing. It's like 300 or 400. And who knows how much they're really going to entrust a 25-year-old rookie with carries. Probably just be terrified he's going to get strip sacked and fumble. But I would still start him. Yeah, I would still start him over. I would still I don't even know. I'd start him over Cam Akers. I'd start him over Treylon Burks. I would still basically.
Who's a good who's a typical wide receiver 4 on your roster? I think the average roster's wide receiver 4 is still not outscoring the 30th best quarterback. If you say went like 0 RB and you are just stacked at wide receiver, yeah, there's a chance your 4th wide receiver is projecting for 14 fantasy points. Jaren Hall probably projects for like a dozen to 14.
You're probably starting him. So here's the deal. You're probably starting him over Rashee Rice. You're probably not starting him over like Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers is a wide receiver 3 for most people.
That's a good like demarcation line. There's plenty of like wide receiver heavy teams got Jacoby as their 4th option, and I kind of agree with you that you're not starting him over a guy like that.
No, you're not. We'll talk more about the Vikings, I'm sure. We have a trade question here, though. Trade away Rachaad White, who kind of stabilized in week 8. Stabilized is a bit strong, but they keep coming at the king behind him and woefully missing. Keyshawn Vaughn, nothing going on. Sean Tucker had nothing going on before he was healthy scratched. They can't – he's bad, but no one else can take touches from him. He's been catching passes lately, more passes. More his passing production.
Big time. It's like in that 15% range over the past 3 weeks after they had not really done much of that early in the season.
So he's really stabilized as a pass catcher despite being so inefficient as a rusher. Jerome Ford, that situation, I don't know why he even played. I feel like he did himself a disservice playing because now it's almost like he willed a 3-man committee into being. And I feel you don't have to love Rachaad White, but I still feel like Rachaad White's an RB2. I don't really feel like Jerome Ford is an RB2 at the moment, or do you disagree with that?
Now, you about summed it up how I feel is that Ford is in a committee on a PJ Walker-led offense, whereas somehow on a Baker Mayfield-led offense is a selling point, but relative to PJ Walker, it is obviously such a higher floor. And the only level of committee he's in is every 3rd drive. They try and see if like Chase Edmonds has any life this week. They find out the answer is no very quickly. And like, I guess it's another 6-target game for Rachaad White. So yeah, he's got a better share of a backfield that is more valuable, even though it's like which one pick your poison type of situation. But his poison is a lot tastier. But it's a lot better.
Oh, very, very Kyle Dvorchak talking about tasty poison. We love that on our YouTube live stream. It sounds like someone here is wondering if the depth on their waiver wire is good enough to stream. I certainly think it is with Dak Prescott and Sam Howell on your waiver wire. You are in a streaming quarterback league, I would say.
Yes, sir.
Cost Fishes. Very interesting name. No idea what that means. Rico Baptiste. Let's know, should he drop Tank Dell or Christian Watson and pick up James Conner from waiver wire? James Conner is kind of the forgotten man. We spend so much time talking about Amari DiMercato lately, Keontae Ingram, Damon Williams, that Cardinals running backs just rising and falling like crazy. James Conner's IR clock is almost up. I think maybe only one more week, one game. But then so many moving parts in this Cardinals offense. So let's start here. Is Tank Dell a drop? Coming off the bye, Noah Brown's back. I mean, Robert Woods is out, but we were concerned about Tank Dell heading into week 9. Wasn't an amazing performance. I don't know if you saw anything in the underlying data, though. Do you think Tank Dell is a drop for Rico?
I mean, it depends what you need at running back. James Conner I was all out on James Conner. He's an old running back playing on a bad team. For me, I'm not going to draft that guy. And really, he's been pretty efficient before going down with the injury. And his offense should be better. Maybe not this week, maybe this week. We don't know with Kyler Murray and Clayton Tune, apparently. But in the near future, it should be better with Kyler Murray returning. So if you need a running back, absolutely. But I will say, like, Tank Dell perfectly fine last week, 93% route rate. That's as high as it gets. Like, you have to be Justin Jefferson to run 100% of your team's routes. He functionally ran every route, 19% target share. Yeah, he was out there getting a bunch of targets relative to his team's offense. He's still his team's second receiver. Christian Watson is clearly his team's first receiver. He saw, like, this was my game. I didn't count him exactly. But of his 8 targets, either 4 or 5 were in the end zone. Didn't come down with a single one of them. So they're both good.
That's 2 weeks in a row that's happened, by the way. He is devouring air yards. He is devouring green zone touches. And the fire remains unlit in my hearth, Kyle.
Tough scene.
My family is freezing, and they are getting absolutely nothing from these Christian Watson rate stats. They need actual stats, Kyle.
We'd love to find some actual stats. We're searching high and low.
But you can't. You can't drop him. You really can't drop him, right? I mean, I'm not dropping Christian Watson in any league, or are you?
I mean, I have a league where we started, like, we were debating, like, Darrell Henderson. We were debating Gus Edwards and Darrell Henderson. Turns out we made the wrong call. We didn't pick up 3 touchdowns with Gus Edwards. In that league, we literally do have Christian Watson in that league. I still wouldn't drop Christian Watson for James Conner in that league. It's a double flex league. I would drop Tank Dell for James Conner if my need at running back is, like, I'm struggling to even find RB3 points. But Christian Watson, his usage is that of, like, a top 15 fantasy receiver. Will we ever realize that usage? Let's not dig too deep into the weeds on that one. But he's like an actual team's wide receiver 1. It's very
Christian Watson, you were hoping that you were getting a set and forget wide receiver 2. What you got instead is a volatile wide receiver 3. I think someone who's still in the top 36 more weeks than not. This week there are 4 teams on bye. Can't believe I want to have Christian Watson in the top 36. But someone who seemed like he had a really strong path to being in every wide receiver 2. He's not that. And he's just like a volatility guy. And if the usage remains the same, he's going to hit a big play. He's going to have like a 2 touchdown game. And you just have to hope at some point Christian Watson flips a matchup in your wide receiver 3 spot. Johnny, this is kind of a long question, but I'll answer it. Johnny, trying to maximize points, a wide receiver in a flex spot open, pick 2 of Davante Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Josh Jacobs. I think we're going to just give him the boring answer. But let's see. Are you giving Johnny the boring answer here, Kyle? Or are you going to tell him to get crazy, in Jacoby Myers?
No, and we've talked about this. Like, I think it's fair to say Jacoby Myers has closed the gap between himself and Davante Adams relative to what we thought it was in week 1 or 2 or whatever. But we have such a strong wealth of data to say that Davante Adams is one of the best receivers, like, this side of Calvin Johnson. So, no, Davante Adams, Josh Jacobs, it's slightly closer. It's meaningfully closer than I would have thought a month ago. And they're scheming a lot of looks for Jacoby Myers, but I just can't find it in my heart to buy what is, like, functionally a 4 or 5 game sample, probably even less, probably a 3 or 4 game sample versus the entire body of work that is Davante Adams.
I thought Davante Adams looked a lot healthier in week 7, and that basically we needed that puzzle piece to fall in place. Then we needed an actual quarterback to start puzzle piece to fall in place.
True.
Jimmy Garoppolo will at least start the game. Who's to say if he will finish it? Not really his strong suit, but Jimmy Garoppolo will start the game. And I think we could finally get a spiked week from Davante Adams, even though the Lions defense has been pretty frisky, especially at home. I just don't tell that to the Ravens. Adams wondering, by the way, he needs 34 points from Adams, Jacobs, and Laporta. Can he get it? What's it? Give him his odds on closing this matchup out.
I'm gonna say he is. Davante probably projects for like 16 points. You're probably like 60-40. You're probably 60-40 to make it, because you're probably getting like 16 and 15 points alone from Adams and Jacobs and 10 to 12 from Laporta. But those are all tied to like higher. All players have kind of funky distributions. They're not perfect bell curves. So I'd say you're probably 60-40 to get it, because you've just got 2, really 3 absolute volume hogs for their relative positions. So yeah, you're a favorite to get it. Not a massive favorite, but I'd say
not a massive favorite. Things could go very, very awry for you, Adam. But like, if you were just ran the simulation 100 times, more times than not, you would win it. But life doesn't work that way. Orchard is wondering, is Matthew Stafford worth holding on to, or should we move to exclusive streaming? Stafford is day to day with the sprained thumb. They have 1 game, then they have a bye.
Ooh.
I think you kind of need to be moving on from Matthew Stafford just for that reason, because they're already talking about the cold weather in Green Bay. Like, they're kind of like conjuring excuses not to play. I don't know why they would put him on IR. To me, that makes no sense. The quarterback is important enough where you just carry him and hope he gets healthier in 4 games,
Yes.
even if you don't know for sure. But my guess is we probably won't see a Matthew Stafford start before week 11. But it's just fully that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that would just from a like team building or team structuring perspective, like you said, don't put him on IR, because if he can come back after 2 games missed, the 3rd game, that is worth holding the roster spot.
Even 3 games, if you could just get 1 extra game out of him, I don't know why they would even consider.
Yeah, come back on the 4th game. Yeah, it's worth burning that roster spot. But on the other hand, it is worth giving him 1 week off, because I didn't realize they had the bye. That's a good call. That they have the bye coming up. Give him that extra time. Let him come back and not, or at least decrease his risk of injury. And I'm not holding on to a quarterback like Stafford for an obvious 0. Like, he's not worth holding on to the bench for a 0 spot. Unlike real life football, our fantasy rosters cannot afford that roster spot.
Real life football, the Rams need to be doing everything possible. Fantasy, you just need to be moving on. And it's weird too, because he has been like the classic. He is supplying fantasy points for other people, cannot do anything to get them for himself.
Yeah.
Having as many interceptions as touchdowns has not been helping. Let's try to just drill down in this a little more. Puka is in trouble. I mean, Jordan Addison is in trouble. I would say I think Puka is in more trouble. The receiver core in LA is big enough for the 2 of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua when it's a competent quarterback. I don't see any backup on the Rams roster being able to keep 2 top 24 receivers alive. Or do you have an alternate take? Not a good run game. Maybe let's become a 40 pass attempt team, like super short throws. Do you have an alternate Puka take to no, Puka is no longer a wide receiver 2?
I mean, to me, he's still a wide receiver 2, because he was a top 10 fantasy option with Stafford. And it's not like we were betting on touchdowns from Stafford. He wasn't throwing a single one of those, like you said. So volume alone, like, puts him in that Garrett Wilson level of like, this guy sees so many looks. I don't care how bad his quarterback is. And also Garrett Wilson's quarterback is like the 48th best quarterback in the NFL alone. Brett Rippon might be the 46th or whatever. He's also not good. And the good news is Puka's hopefully fine in that if Stafford's day-to-day and they give him a week off, and it will turn into obviously 2 weeks because of the bye, hopefully he comes back and it's everything back to normal. The light at the end of the tunnel is the 2024 season for the Vikings. So at least with Puka, you can tell yourself, I'm going to bank on a wide receiver 23 high target share game this week. His bye is expected and things return to normal. I don't know what the hope is for Addison, because right now he's balling out because he has no Justin Jefferson to compete with. Then a week after that, I was trying to
say real quick before you get on Addison, who do you think is the most likely winner of the Hunger Games, basically the post Kirk Cousin Hunger Games? Is it Jordan Addison, the clear and obvious place to place our bet, or do we have to be considering TJ Hawkinson there too?
I think it's Hawkinson. I think Hawkinson makes more sense as like the relief valve for a 6.7 A game from Jaron Hall or whatever it ends up being. Whereas Addison has like been a really strong like seam stretcher down the middle of the field. I'm not sure if that's what a backup quarterback is going to be looking to. And you also get the relative value advantage of like, oh, Hawkinson went out in 4 for 60 and no touchdown. That's the QB, or that's the tight end 7 on the week. Whereas if Jordan Addison does that, you're like, oh, he was a wide receiver 37. So I think if you make me pick one to keep in my fantasy lineups, it's without a doubt TJ Hawkinson.
That's a really good way to put it. They're both going to really fall back to the pack. You just have so much further to fall at tight end and remain in the top 12. That is a really, really intelligent way to put that. Woodboy wondering about Brock Purdy. Back-to-back games, more turnovers than touchdowns. 3-game losing streak, regressing to the mean hard. It turns out he couldn't get away with these turnover-worthy plays forever. It's also no way he's quite as bad as he's appeared the past 2 weeks, especially playing through head issues. They're on bye this week, so you're not playing him this week regardless. Do you think Brock Purdy is worth keeping around in your roster through the week 9 bye in a single QB league, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been ranking him as like a top 11, top 12 QB. He's like, doesn't have the volume or like the high end, like actual talent level play to push into that top 6 or 7.
I'm sure he's not good at all, but
no. But every single week, both like previous week's box score up until recently, until the past 2 weeks, but also looking forward, Vegas's implied team total tells you that the 49ers are going to drop close to 30 points, 28, 27, 30. So every single week we can project them to put up a ton of points. And at quarterback, efficiency matters more than any other position. When we talk about like Kirk Cousins and him supporting his players, that's because his players, even if they only score 21 points, can have like multiple 100-yard games on that roster with 8 catches apiece. At quarterback, we just need touchdowns. Obviously, other things help. Rushing would help, but Vegas consistently, and they produce on this. It's not like they're like, oh, they're not getting there. They consistently put a ton of points on the board. So I'd probably hold him in your standard 12-team league if I can. If I'm not like dying to get, I need Trey McBride. I lost my tight end this week. As long as you don't have a strong desire to fill that roster spot with someone else, he's probably the best you're going to do. Like I would not be looking to someone like they mentioned, Russell Wilson, probably not looking that deep. So yeah, he's a fine hold, not a mandatory hold, but fine.
It's not just Brock Purdy getting healthier in week 9. Presumably when the 49ers come off by in week 10, Trent Williams will be returning. Debo Samuel will be returning. Neither were placed on the IR. So the 49ers view them as truly week to week. We'll get one more prediction on tonight. Can Jesse get 16 points? We're going to assume PPR from Jahmyr Gibbs. I would say yes. What do you say?
I would say yes too. I mean, Gibbs' role has been like stunning in the 2 games without David Montgomery. With David Montgomery, it's less exciting. As someone who drafted some Gibbs, it's a little less exciting. But whenever David Montgomery is out, he dominates the touches. He runs a lot of routes. Looks pretty good on it too. And it's a good offense. It's a good offensive line. So yes.
I will say I'm not expecting like 87% of the snaps again or whatever, because they played all of week 7 from behind against the Ravens. They should be front running tonight at home against the Raiders. And we might get a little bit of Craig Reynolds revenge, but I still think we're getting at least 65 to 70% of the snaps for Jahmyr Gibbs, quite possibly 75 to 80. We're going to see a slightly different Lions offensive approach tonight, but I would still feel pretty good about Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs. Here's one of the players of the week who you could have thrown into the mix if Trey McBride were not such an obvious ad of the week. Is Demario Douglas worth picking up for Tank Dell? Also, he needs a Monrad to get 8 points over Josh Jacobs tonight. But Demario Douglas, I would say, is the receiver ad of the week. Yeah. Even though I feel like there's only so high you can go. Dude's 5'8", 192 pounds. But so do you like Demario Douglas in general as an ad? And do you like him as an ad when the player you're dropping is Tank Dell?
I'd take Tank Dell over him. Speaking of, there's only so high you can go. He's 5'8", whatever pounds. That describes Tank Dell well, but we've already seen Tank Dell sort of exceed what we would have assumed are the physical limitations. He's a fine ad. He is my top ad, but that's because the other options like Quentin Johnston, who showed a sign of life and is a first-round pick, so I threw him on the list. And Khalil Shakir, who played a bunch of snaps, had some good production, and his team had never shown any inclination to do that until this week. So put him on the list. I think Demario Douglas is probably the highest floor, and of the guys, maybe Johnson has a higher ceiling, but at least the highest floor because he's clearly his team's best receiver. He has the highest PFF passing, PFF receiving grade, has the highest yards per route run, and outside of Ty Montgomery, he has the highest targets per route run. He's the best receiver in every phase of my ability to measure receivers. It's because they have set some pretty low bars competing him with Juju and Devontae. But yeah, I think he should go out and be his team's wide receiver 1. It's a pretty bland passing attack. It's a pretty balanced team. I don't have any faith in Mac Jones doing anything other than a little bit of distribution, like ball distribution, essentially. So, I hold on to Tank Dell because hopefully you're not starting either of these guys because they're going to be like wide receiver 4 adjacent players. But if one of them could reclaim, or for Tank, it would basically be reclaim wide receiver 2-3 throne, it would be Tank since we've already seen him do that. Douglas is, I don't know if he's a PPR scam, but he's a PPR scam plus.
Yeah. He's, no matter what, going to be the most targeted Patriots receiver. I don't think even the Patriots could galaxy brain this one. Juju Smith-Schuster has nothing left. Juju got 1 target yesterday.
And they didn't run him on a lot of routes. They ran him a third of the routes. They seem to know what he is.
He's barely functioning. It's very bad. Again, the one time he popped up was when he flexed over the guy that he concussed down extremely bad. Would you trade Rachaad White and Brandon Ayuk for Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kyle Dvorchak?
Yeah, the best player situation we got going on here, especially with Debo returning probably in a week. Or you said they're on bye, so 2 weeks at this point. White is fine, but that team is desperate to put anyone else in that role. At some point, they may decide to do it. I don't know if it'll be this week or the next, or maybe it never will happen. But the only thing you're playing him for is PPR value. So I'll try and acquire what is almost certainly a top 8 to 10 fantasy receiver versus Ayuk, who's top 15, top 12 without Debo, but then top 20-ish with Debo in the mix. So yeah, give me the best player available as you tend to lean toward.
Yeah, you're trading real value, but there's just too many variables involved with Brandon Ayuk and maybe even Rachaad White. You can only be so horribly inefficient for so long. No one's had success yet forcing a committee there. But
It's like
Amon-Ra,
Alexander Madison and Cam Akers. Akers is terrible. He's been terrible with the Rams, and he was not been good with the Vikings. But so is Madison. And at some point, they start giving Akers looks just to give him a shot to be better, because it's not a high bar to clear. And even when he doesn't clear it, that results in one game Madison gets all the snaps, all the touches, and seemingly out of nowhere, but really it's just there is no difference between the two. The next guy gets all the touches. So like in week 13. If Sean Tucker is active and sees 12 carries, am I surprised? No, they're all the same.
Here's an easy one for Duffy. I would definitely trade TJ. You got to get out from underneath TJ Hawkins if you can. That would be the softest landing possible. Do that for the other manager
100%.
sees this. Here's a tough one. Aaron Jones, buy low, stay away, pray to something. Like, what is the deal with Aaron Jones? Like, clearly they don't think he's 100% healthy still. Clearly they have to get him more involved to be even remotely competent in offense, but he hasn't had 10 carries yet. The calendar's going to be November here in 2 days. What in the world do you do with Aaron Jones?
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you say buy low, it sounds like he's not on your roster. I'd leave it that way because, as Pat pointed out, they don't think he's on. They said as much. Matt LaFleur said that he's not 100%. He's able to play, but it's just like this guy's been banged up all year, and he's already re-aggravated the injury once. I don't know at what point they're giving him 15 touches. It might be next week. It might be a month from now. Maybe it doesn't happen again this year. But even when he gets those 15 touches, he's like a 28-year-old running back dealing with soft tissue injuries on at this point, a very dreadful offense. You need to hit so many pieces of the parlay is like, oh, he's as efficient as he always been.
That's
he
a really
stays
great
healthy.
way
He
to
gets
put
the
it.
touches. The offense doesn't suck. That I'm not buying low. I'm staying away.
Yeah, it's the you hit the first 5, and then the 6th what will treat you up. It is a classic hopeless parlay. Kyle Pitts manager down extremely bad. Should they just move forward,
brother?
Should they just move forward with Taysom Hill, who I had no idea what to expect from Taysom Hill entering week 8. He was banged up. Juwan Johnson was coming back, but it was just the Taysom Hill show rolling on unabated. But are you ranking in a vacuum? Are you ranking Taysom Hill ahead of Kyle Pitts right now?
No, but that's because I'm still going to have Kyle Pitts at like tight end 9, and I probably have Taysom Hill tight end 11. Like, if you want to flip them, if you're sick of the Kyle Pitts experience, I understand that they're not going to project for that many different points this week. But I'm just always at least a little bit skeptical of Taysom Hill. Like, he got 9 carries and 2 touchdowns last week. Like, his actual expected fantasy points is so low when they don't use him as a pass catcher, which is pretty typical. It's up until, he had 2 weeks where he was a pass catcher, but you're just hoping they give him 2 carries in the red zone. That's such a volatile bet, but it's also not really a particularly high ceiling bet. Like 100 yards from scrimmage seems like it can almost never happen for Hill. Whereas like we can get there with Kyle Pitts and we can get there on PPR volume with Kyle Pitts. With that being said, it's the tight end 9 versus the tight end 11. We're flipping coins, and I think a slight edge leans Pitts.
Really, really tough one after Aaron Jones. Less tough than Aaron Jones. We at least know we're not benching Tony Pollard, but is there officially a problem with the role, even though the role on paper is just really good? And I still think it's just a function of these really bizarre Cowboys game scripts. What do we tell people who are very understandably getting super antsy with Tony Pollard?
I mean, I will say part of the role is like they're just giving him a ton of between the tackles work, and not that he like last year at least he was actually really good at between tackle stuff. Like anything like on the inside of the guards was good for him, and even on the inside of the tackles was better for him than Zeke. He's still coming off of what was like the high ankle sprain, like fractured ankle or something like that.
It was a pretty nasty leg break.
It was not great. So maybe that's what's doing it. But there's no like all these are like maybe that's why. But that's why ends in he has been not efficient at all this year. The role in terms of just like expected fantasy points is still very good. They're still really the only back they care to use, the only back they care to target, red zone work. And another one last week where, the Cowboys dropped 40 points. They beat their opponents in positive game script all week. And I don't check the box score. I'm just going to assume Tony Pollard, 115, 2 touchdowns, probably didn't catch as many passes, but that's okay. He got 2 touchdowns. Obviously not. As you've learned every single week except for week 1, every single one of these Cowboys games where they drop 40, he doesn't score the touchdowns. You're still playing him. But this guy called him a worse Joe Mixon. I don't know if he's a worse Joe Mixon, but he is 100% in that range. There's no caveats to it. Maybe it's the ankle or whatever, and he looks better down the stretch. But through 8 weeks of football, he 100% looks like Joe Mixon, a guy who is just out there absorbing touches and doing nothing with them, and in fact, gaining less than you'd expect with them. Is that guy still a borderline RB1? Yeah, that guy probably still is. I mean, he still is, in fact, a borderline RB1, but he's so much more dependent on what his offense does and the game script, and does he get targets in a given game? Whereas last year's efficiency of Tony Pollard was 14 touches. We put up 120 yards and scored twice. Joe Mixon's the perfect comp for him right now.
As I first saw the Joe Mixon comp this morning and have been haunted by it all day. It's been floating around out there and feels way too spot on. We're talking about trying to get out from underneath Vikings. I feel like this is probably a yes here. I feel like trading Justin Jefferson for Tony Pollard, who you just kind of said was not a great investment right now, but I think it's a classic, like one in the hand is better than two in the bush. Or is this just like too desperate for your liking? Hold on to the number one overall player in fantasy in Justin Jefferson, or just don't bet on this Vikings chaos in this situation right now.
Yeah, Vikings are another team where it feels like you probably got to get a few legs of the parlay, right? Where like, does Justin Jefferson come back? At this point, he almost certainly has no incentive to. Maybe they, trade for a quarterback, or Carson Wentz shows up and shows some life, takes 8 sacks, but he still gets a win or whatever. But I don't think the quarterback play, at best, it's going to be top 28, right? They have not Zach Wilson level quarterback play, because there are no quarterbacks available who are like top 20 quarterbacks in the NFL.
What if they sign Carson Wentz? Like, honestly,
he's
what
terrible.
Would you say then?
That's the problem.
He is terrible, but I mean, he's better than Nick Mullins, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. He's a top 30 NFL quarterback. I think he is.
He's been trending downward. He's top 27 or 28. Nick Mullins top 28, 29. Carson Wentz top 27, top 28.
Exactly. They just don't have an out. Maybe it's Jacoby Brissett, who, I mean, I know we got a report that the Browns weren't interested. My question would be, why? What's wrong with you, Cleveland? And Brissett's fine. Like, he actually played really well for the Browns last year. I mean, I think a lot of it was sort of tailored to his skill set quite well. Not the point. Other coaches can do that as well. If they got Brissett and he played as well as he did last year, that's like the one out to Justin Jefferson being better than Tony Pollard in this situation. But outside of that, and then that doesn't, my other leg of the parlay was that he has to come back soon, whereas he is really not incentivized to come back. He doesn't have a contract, but also he's not coming back to save the season. Without a real quarterback, the season is functionally over. So I would take Tony Pollard here, and that's coming off of the back of saying he's fancy Joe Mixon.
Yeah, you don't feel great about it, but that's probably a pretty good outcome for Justin Jefferson at this point.
It'd be a great outcome if they trade for Jacoby Brissett, or they get Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz looks like Colts Carson Wentz.
No, I mean, getting rid of Justin Jefferson, I'm saying, is a good outcome.
Yeah, that's the best outcome for your fantasy team.
It's a pretty good outcome there, all things considered. Jacoby Brissett thing's not happening, by the way. Trade Mr. George Pickens for Mr. Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett finally percolating a bit the past few weeks. He's been on the injury report constantly. Seems pretty banged up. I think he's had two of his best games in the past 3 weeks, arguably his best game of the season yesterday. George Pickens got a touchdown to get home yesterday, had the surprising 100-yard game in Deontay Johnson's return in week 7, but still feels like a guy where he needs a lot to happen to get home every week. It has happened the past 2 weeks, but how do you feel about dealing George Pickens for Tyler Lockett?
Yeah, I'd take Tyler Lockett. 2 weeks ago, like you said, he not only did he get home, or 2 weeks ago, he had like the 100-yard game, which I think was only his like second 100-yard game ever playing alongside Deontay Johnson. I think it was the most yards he had ever gotten playing alongside Deontay Johnson as well. It was the George Pickens we had come to expect from weeks 2 to 5 or whatever it was. 35% target share, targeted on 29% of his routes. And you think, oh, well, they're finally going to make it work to have just 2 very obvious wide receivers. Let's not throw to the rest of the guys. And then we saw exactly who we expected from George Pickens last week. 13% target share, targeted on 1 out of every 10 routes. Deontay Johnson dominates the targets with 35% target share. That was always the concern, is that every single time Deontay Johnson's on the field, his quarterbacks choose to throw to him, and that comes right out of George Pickens' pocket. We thought we'd escaped it 2 weeks ago. We had absolutely not. That appears to just be a complete mirage. And I say that because that's what we've seen throughout George Pickens' career. It's not just saying, oh, I'm going to rely on last week versus 2 weeks ago. Last week fell in line exactly with what we've seen throughout his career. So I would try to get out from under George Pickens right now.
This isn't a question. It's just a comment from Office Depot that if you think Kyle Pitts is a rocky ride, Taysom Hill at tight end might not be for you. Michelle is looking for better options to rotate the quarterback. She's got Kyler on IR, Geno and Purdy. Purdy on bye this week. Geno Struggling is maybe a bit strong, but playing his worst
Fair.
football since his Seahawks revival. Should she drop Geno for Will Levis or Jimmy G? Just to kind of maybe shake up her quarterback rotation.
I don't think so. Look, Will Levis's game was really impressive, but do we want to bet on that happening again? I don't want to bet on that happening again, especially with the idea of like Geno and Purdy are like a strong matchup-based floor option, and they're just carrying water until you get Kyler Murray back in the lineup, which could apparently be as soon as this week. So, and yes, to answer your second question, if Kyler Murray is active, I'm 100% starting him.
We have another trade question here from Mr. Duffy. Alvin Kamara and Justin Jefferson for Monty, and who's Hill?
Tyreek, I assume, since Justin Jefferson's involved.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. What do you think? What do you think, Kyle? As I try to remember who Tyreek Hill is.
I guess I would go David Montgomery and Tyreek Hill. I imagine we'll see David Montgomery, if not next week, the week after that. I think they actually have a bye this coming week, don't they? So I remember they could hold him out this week.
They do have a bye this week. That is correct.
Yeah, so you're missing one more week of David Montgomery, but it was one you always knew you were going to miss. And at that point, they called him like just straight week to week and didn't put him on IR, which, as you pointed out, means he's probably missing fewer than 4 games. That's the minimum he has to miss on IR. So it looks like his next game, which is 2 weeks from now, is a probable return. We talked about Justin Jefferson already. As much as like I want to be buying in on Justin Jefferson and Alvin Kamara, who at their peak, which Kamara is right now in terms of usage, and Justin Jefferson once healthy, or like apparently Kamara is the most used running back in the NFL. He's been so since he returned. And Justin Jefferson, to no surprise, is one of the most used receivers. I don't have a lot of faith in us seeing Justin Jefferson soon. Maybe he comes back for a late quote playoff push or whatever, or maybe he's back soon. But there's so much more certainty in David Montgomery and Tyreek Hill. Not to mention David Montgomery, when he's healthy, one of the most used running backs in the NFL. Not to Kamara levels, because Kamara's PPR value just absolutely goes goes nuclear for his fantasy value, assuming you play in a PPR league. But even in standard leagues, the average target is worth more than the average carry. So David Montgomery and Tyreek Hill, because the Justin Jefferson stuff terrifies me.
Feel free to keep the questions coming. We got about 10 minutes left. Tingley here, looking like they want to shake up the roster. The trade Kelsey, Etienne, or Kamara. Upgrade. Sorry, it's kind of long. To upgrade wide receiver QB. Got Law. You could upgrade a quarterback. Puka, D. Smith, Devontae Smith, Flowers. Like, yeah, they could upgrade a receiver too. What are you thinking, Kyle? Is it time to shake up Tingley's season?
I would. That was funny. Sorry. I wouldn't be trading Etienne or Kamara. Yeah, I probably wouldn't be doing anything, especially like you're going to have to labor through what Pat said was 2 weeks of Puka. It's not going to be great this week, and then his bye week. But I feel solid, like you said, that we'll see Stafford within 3 to 4 weeks' time, at which point...
I don't know. I can't get a read on the Stafford situation, man. I wouldn't be shocked if they did something kind of illogical, but I don't know why they would do it. Like, they should not put Matthew Stafford on injured reserve. Like, categorically should not do that.
Yeah, I mean, assuming also one thing you can start, I would hope you could start 3 running backs, like 2 running backs and a flex, because at some point you will want to be starting Etienne, Kamara, Achane. Maybe the one option is you go Pacheco and maybe like someone with the name brand value of Devonta Smith to try and upgrade basically just upgrade Devonta Smith to like a low end wide receiver 1 by packaging Pacheco with him, for example, because I think Devonta Smith holds much more name brand value than he does actual fantasy value. It's just so clear that Devonta Smith is good. AJ Brown is freaking great, man.
So it seems like you think Devontae Smith is a sell high after he finally...
He's like a sell low, frankly. Did he even like do stuff last week? Did he have a good week?
Well, no. He finally got in the box score yesterday. I think it was 99 yards, 7 catches, nice. But it was the first time he really popped. Before that, he'd only been over 78 yards one time since week 2. I feel like there's got to be. I don't feel as good about Devontae Smith bouncing back as I do Jalen Waddle, because Jalen Waddle's usage is still pretty nuts. Devontae Smith's usage isn't bad, but it does just seem like 2022 is not coming back for Devontae. I have more faith in 2022 coming back for Jalen Waddle down the stretch than I do Devontae Smith.
That's a good way to put it.
They're always forever interlinked in my mind too, because they're just like the classic. There would be number 1 on a lot of teams, but they're not number 1 on their team. So that's bad. Kenny Pickett for Brian Robinson, or is that Bijan? Kelvin, is that Bijan or Brian? Here, get back to us.
I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Kenny Pickett's worthless.
I mean, it's a super flex. I don't know.
It literally doesn't matter.
Well, that seems very strong to me.
Go pick up Clayton Tune. you'll get the same results as it turns out.
They do report that he's got the UCL sprain. They're going to sign a quarterback, but they haven't said the injured reserve magic words yet, is where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, Stafford will be inactive this week, one would imagine, and then they functionally have, like, they put a guy in the practice squad, and then they get to call him up or whatever. So
Jonathan Taylor, a really, really, like,
dude, I was counting my damn money after one half of football.
How did he not get 100 yards? How did it happen?
I don't know. Is this a problem for your like bonus league?
It is. It was.
Well, it's a problem on DraftKings.
That is a problem.
A bunch of points for.
Got the repo man at my house without the 100 yards from Jonathan Taylor yesterday. I mean, I sort of feel like it almost had to be injury related, and there's going to be an injury popping up on the Wednesday report. Like, oh yeah, he was playing through a groin injury the entire second half. We just didn't mention it for some reason. If there's not an injury, I don't really know what to think about it. But I also don't see how his snaps just don't continue to increase. It sounds like hope, but like, why would they not? What do you tell people about Jonathan Taylor right now? Because I don't know what to tell people. I was flabbergasted by what happened yesterday with Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, like, in totality, last week doesn't look that bad. He set a season high in snap share at 61%. He set just shy of his season high in his carry shares, percent of the team's carries at 52%. He crushed his route share at 59%. First time on the season, he's gone over half. Just all of it came in the first half. He was the Jonathan Taylor in the first half. And maybe that is just like a different way. We talk about sequencing. Like maybe it's just a different way to say he was upgraded. His role literally was upgraded by the letter of the law last week. It just came in the most annoying, dysfunctional way possible. And it's very possible. He's like, my ankle felt a little tight after that first half. And coach like, all right, like, you are coming off an ankle injury. Let's scale your stuff back. We are still in totality trending in the right direction. We have just found the most annoying way to go in that direction as possible. And I don't think that's how other people would see it. So it's not a spot where I think you should like sell low. In fact, I'd probably be buying Taylor again because he is supremely talented and his role is still working in the right direction. It just has a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back progression, which is fair. Like a lot of progressions, not only from like players increasing their like quote talent level, but also increasing their role are non-linear. It happens in bits and spurts. This one just sucks that it happened as he was at 95 freaking yards.
Maybe it was honestly something as dumb as it was like a baseball pitch count where they had a truly set number. Sure. And for some reason, maybe he was running hotter than they expected. So they just used all the touches up in the first half. I wish they would have just come out and said that. They didn't come out and say that, but it could have been something like that where he's got 15 bullets today. And they used all of them in the first half, but
that's totally possible. Like coaches do the sort of esoteric nonsense like that. Yeah,
they really do stuff like that. Duffy, yet another trade question. If he was to keep Kamara, would Jefferson for Waddle work? Yeah, I feel like you just got to be getting what you can for Jefferson, and like the public, quote unquote, hasn't quite caught up yet to that situation. Where I think if you can get any valuable like top 18 running back, top 18 receiver, you kind of just do it. I hate to sell low in the number 1 overall pick, but I feel like it is sell low season on Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
Another question here. Would you consider trying to buy JT for, say, Mostert? Is Mostert a pumpkin again? I'll weigh in on Mostert really quick.
Go for it.
Because, Kyle, we were talking about Mostert's – he's become one of those guys where he's on the injury report. Like, I pay attention to that, actually, because I believe Raheem Mostert is actually hurt when he's on the injury report. And he played, I would think, outsnapped his backups 43-12. I think Jeff Wilson and Salvin Ahmed, they either had 12 or 19 snaps. I don't know why I can't remember the exact number, but outsnapped him pretty comfortably. The efficiency has been going down, though. He's on the injury report. He hit a wall last year. He's never a guy who's been meant to be used as a workhorse. The Dolphins are in Germany this week. Then they're on bye. Then Devin Achane is probably coming back. I think if you can trade Raheem Mostert this week, that would be a good outcome for your fantasy team. Do you agree?
Yeah, the snap count was 40-36 total, as in each of those backups saw. I think it was 18 on the dot. I think on the recap you said 19 each. So you were right on that one. That he saw the majority of them, but the backups were more involved than we're used to seeing. And as you pointed out, like he was on the injury report up until Friday. We didn't exactly know what was going to happen with him. Ultimately told reporters he was going to play. I think he played through a questionable tag. But like you said, he's a veteran who's dealt with more injuries than most veterans have, especially given his relatively low status in terms of like he's not every single season getting 300 touches and eventually gets banged up. It's like somewhat fair to say he's a bit injury prone. So I would say, yeah, it's probably not a bad time to sell high, especially because, as you pointed out, Achane, as good as Mostert is, Achane is incredible. He will eat into the Mostert role the moment he steps back on the field.
Yep, I would be looking very powerfully into trading Raheem Mostert this week. And yeah, your friend is lying, man. He's lying really hard. Tell him to stop lying right to your face. Martin has DK Metcalf, Rice. Sometimes who's Rice? Rashee Rice, DeAndre Hopkins. Trading DK, Rashee Rice, DeAndre Hopkins for Brandon Ayuk, Isaiah Pacheco, Cortland Sutton. Pretty interesting trade. Which side do you prefer there, Kyle?
Give me the DK side. Like, I think DK and Pacheco are like maybe best player available, but Diop, way he played last week, also is putting his name in the best player of the trade conversation. And then like from now to end of season sort of growth potential, Rice probably fits the bill as well. So give me the first side. I don't feel that
this trade's pretty even. I got to be honest. Where I think you could construct an argument Ayuk's the best player in the deal. You can construct an argument Isaiah Pacheco is the best player in the deal. You could construct an argument DeAndre Hopkins might be the best player in the deal. I mean, Will Levis is probably – he hasn't had his career statistical output. I don't know if he's ever going to drop dimes quite like he did yesterday again because, like, he was the dimesman. It was insane. He looked amazing. Yeah, it was pretty sick, but we'll stand on Kyle's answer right there. We're dropping Tank Dell to pick up DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, should not have been on the wire in your league, but who are we to tell your league that Tank Dell seems like the pretty clear drop over Hollywood Brown or Deontay Johnson. Correct, Kyle?
Yep, correct.
Eagles fly, Eagles fly. Trey reminding us of the Eagles record. Thank you, Trey. Let's see here. Anybody have any last second questions? We'll answer one or two more questions. You might not believe it. We're actually out of questions, though. If you got one or two more questions, if not, I don't know. I got to carve a pumpkin tonight. Got to watch the World Series tonight. Maybe I have to pick up frozen custard for my family tonight, Kyle. Sorry that we started late. That was my fault. Real quick, Michelle, very, very loyal viewer. Tank Dell on the bench. Need tight end. Well, you would definitely trade Tank Dell. I don't know if I understand the question, Kyle. Do you?
It reads like, do I trade Tank Dell for Laporta? Like, I am
you would do
Shaq
that
and
very
Kobe
quickly.
going to the rim.
Yeah. I would trade Tank Dell for Jake Ferguson even probably.
I don't think I would, but like it's not terrible. It's fine.
Off the top, Tingley's been asking about low-end wide receiver ones to target in a trade. I'm targeting Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle
That's a good call.
Has weathered his worst stretch of the season. He's kept his baseline pretty high, a little higher than Devontae Smith. That usage in this offense too, there's no like running game trap doors necessarily in Miami. I know Devin Achane's coming back, but there's not going to be games where they're just running like 35 times like the Eagles can do. I think Jalen Waddle is going to have a really, really, really strong second half of the season. One more, Lowell, should we start? Kareem Hunt might be in a three-man committee now, but I think I probably prefer a three-man committee, Kareem Hunt over Najee Harris. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. They're like so similar in that regard. So sure.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for viewing in. Sorry we started late. My fault. We'll be back next week at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be on the site all week. A lot of injury news, unfortunately. Kyle's got an article with a stat on every team coming out. He's got Waiver Wired live right now. I've got rankings coming out. Podcasting with Mr. Danny Carter on Tuesday. A lot of really good stuff on the site. Keep it locked. Tuesday afternoon's the trade deadline. Trade deadline disappoints the NFL every single year. There are bigger names than usual still being bandied about this year. So it could be a pretty interesting day. So keep it locked to Rotoworld.com. For Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thanks for viewing. We'll be back next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern.